As Old as Time, Part 3. The Beast. It's a diary. The Beast spoke aloud first, guessing the truth of it. My mirror just shows exactly what is going on in the present, right now. This shows her memories. She gave this to Monsieur Levi. Belle turned the little mirror over in her hand, a look of wonder on her face. Like she was asking him to keep it for her, in case something happened to her. Like she knew. She was thinking about me. She didn't just leave and forget me. She's your mother, Belle, the Beast said gently. She wouldn't have. The mother she had dismissed for so many years, by magic as well as inclination, had forced her way back into her daughter's life, and she was not only a more complicated person than Belle had believed, but more motherly. What was the last spell she cast, after she left the castle, she said, dismissing the intriguing, but immediately unhelpful new thoughts in her head. None of the children or babies in the castle ever got sick with the fever. Like me, I was fine, the Beast said. Some people said it was a miracle. Maybe it was your mother. But she let your parents die, Belle said bleakly. I'm so sorry. Now what? The Beast asked impatiently, obviously not wanting to think about it anymore. Now we go see Papa. Hopefully he can clear all this up. Maybe when we show him this, it'll remind him, or free his memory or something. All right, to Belle's father. He held his arm out, and she took it, her face growing grim as they stepped over the ashes and charcoal that had once been furniture and books. The Beast couldn't bear seeing her so sad. If everything goes right, if we break the curse and I become a real king, I'll rebuild the bookstore. I'll make it bigger. Maybe I'll give you your own bookstore. Belle gave him a sad, pleased smile. Thank you. I'll hold you on to that. They walked quietly for a few minutes, then wrapped deep in thought. There it is, Belle said after a few moments. A wide smile grew on her face, and her eyes brightened as it came into view. A snug little house, as comforting and odd as Belle was. None of the other houses they passed had windmills, for instance. Very homey, the Beast said, trying to think of something nice to say. Look, a light's on, she said excitedly. In the kitchen, the little table lantern, he's home. When they got to the door, Belle reached up to push it open, then stopped and turned to the Beast. Maybe you should let me go first, she said delicately. The last time he saw you, you threw him in a prison cell. The Beast immediately slumped, remembering. I'll say I'm sorry, he promised. Which is great, Belle said, squeezing his paws. But maybe I should just bring him up to date on what's happening before you two meet again. Then I'll come back and get you. All right, he grumbled. I'll hide in those bushes over there behind the house. Thank you, she said, standing up on tiptoe to kiss him on the side of his muzzle. It won't be a minute. She turned and he flowed back down the path like an inky shadow, silently inserting himself among the same snowy bushes to wait. The Beast tried to listen in after Belle stepped inside, but the door was solid and there were few windows. He growled. This was ridiculous. He was a prince, a king really, and here he was hiding outside in the cold. He was a beast too, large and thunderously strong, crouched and camouflaged like a rabbit. If he were a prince, a real one, a human one, would he just get to go inside with her on his arm? What would her father say? A prince on the arm of his daughter? What would happen then? Could they marry? There was no one left in the kingdom to object him marrying below his station. Would Belle even like him? Did she like him now? She hadn't pulled away when he had kissed her before, and she had kissed him just now. That was something, right? It was hard to think about the future or have thoughts that were complicated and abstract. He didn't want to reveal this to Belle, but it was getting harder. Any quick and thoughtless instinct, food, hunger, run, smell, good smell, bad, itchy, scratch it, came first, before rational thought. It was hard to ignore. His tail lashed, its bristly fox-like fur whipping snow off the leaves, a veritable catalysm of noise in his sensitive ears. He settled down. Where was she? Hadn't she had enough time yet for a tearful reunion? The Beast was never cold under his thick fur, but something about the little village and its empty streets made the prince shiver. While he had never been in a shop before, He had certainly been elsewhere in the kingdom, on horseback, or on inspection or parade, or just out for a jaunt with his mother, and it had been a much busier, larger, happier town than this. Many more people in houses and buildings, and none of the people looked at strangers as suspiciously as they seemed to do here. It seemed so chilly and quiet in this town, almost like an empty, haunted castle turned inside out. A carriage rumbled by, a black one, then another, this one maybe almost black. Despite his superior vision, he had trouble differentiating colors. That was one of the reasons he liked his royal blue and gold jacket. They were shades he could tell apart easily and looked nice, he thought, all bold and bright. A couple of crows flew overhead, making the lighter caw that differentiated them from ravens. He liked crows. They weren't as standoffish as their larger cousins, and were much smarter than the little brown songbirds he occasionally couldn't resist snagging and gulping. A third vehicle, an old cart, bounced and creaked its way by, driven by a sharp-eyed matron. This was boring. He began to whack the ground spastically with his left hind foot like a buck rabbit. "Where is she?" he growled. "This is taking too long." Of all the various creatures, his body was a hideous amalgam of. Cat wasn't one of them. He had no patience for the lie-in-wait kind of hunting. "Gah!" he finally said, tearing himself from the bushes and loping up the path to the back door. If anyone on the road was actually looking in his direction, they would have seen little. He snuck to the shadows and hid to each available opportunity, drinking well, rock, strange, giant metal contraption wall. He pressed his ear up to the door. Nothing. Surprised, he gently pushed it open with the pads of his paws. It didn't even creak. Nothing alleviated the complete silence of the place. The beast entered cautiously, sniffing the air. Belle had been here. He caught traces of her scent, and scents of other people too. Masculine, one of which could have been her papa, but he didn't think so. Panicking, he dropped on all fours and leapt around the small house, smelling everything and poking into every corner. Nothing, nowhere. He ran his claws through the fur in his head. Where could he have gone? What happened? How could she disappear? His overwhelming instinct was to break out of the tiny confining building and lope up and down the road searching for her. What would Belle do? She would take stock of the situation and think of all the resources available to her, and then make use of them in a logical and consistent manner. "I don't have anything," the beast said aloud, thinking of their pack and a few provisions it had, along with the magic mirror. Eagerly, he pulled it out of the bag he carried. "Show me Belle," it commanded. Immediately, the screen fogged and cleared and showed Belle, tied up and struggling in a small space. A box, maybe. A large padded one? It looked like she was bouncing around while a hooded assailant tried to hold her down. What sort of box could she be put in that moved? Cursing himself for a fool, the beast ran out of the front door of the house and looked up and down the road. Just turning around the bend on the road away from the village was another black carriage. It tipped dangerously onto two wheels as it went, gaining speed. The beast ran after it, full out and on all fours. The carriage turned off the main road and onto one that climbed up a stark, perpetuous hill. This path was twisty and turny, cutting back and forth across the stony escarpment that hid the top of the land below. Thick, stunted, and gnarled trees clung to the cliffs and further caused the road to make some additional twists, yet the carriage never slowed down. The beast himself slipped once or twice in his desperation to reach Belle, and only managed to keep from falling by grabbing onto roots and scrabbling quickly. At the top, the carriage finally slowed. The road ended at a large stone building that reminded the beast of his castle a little. It was ugly and squat, however, with no real windows except for high up on the top floors only. The back side was built on the hill so that half of the construction was underground. The air around it smelled vile and sick, too human for such a remote and wild place. When the wind blew right, screams could be heard issuing thinly between the stones. Rage once again overcame caution, and he leapt, turning himself mid-air and scrambling behind a tree when someone came out of the building to meet the carriage. Several someones, by the smell of it, had hard boots and muskets. "Ah, I see you managed to bring our little guest. Excellent. And no worse for wear, really." The prince dug his claws into his own flesh at Belle's muffled whimpers and cries. More than anything, he wanted to jump up roaring and growling and slavering and tear everything from gut to throat until Belle was safe. The beast within him roiled. Guns? Who cares? Guns make them pay. Kill them, save Belle. The prince shut his eyes, trying to force the blood in his veins to calm. It would feel so good just to give in to it, to be free and terrible. But if he tried, what good would that do to Belle or him if anyone still trapped in this castle? He took a deep breath. Again, what would Belle do? There were too many guards, too many guns, and that building had a large and very sturdy door. It could hide an army of whatever those terrible, pitiful, screaming things were. He couldn't do anything immediately on his own. He needed a plan. He needed reinforcements.